Joining us now, digital creator V Spear with Under the Desk News on TikTok. About 3 million followers for you. V Spear, thank you so much for being back with us. I've talked to you a number of times as we prepared for this decision. Is this a gut punch for you, and what's your initial response?
Oh, certainly it is. And yes, thank you for having me back and following the story so closely over time. It's certainly a gut punch, but one that we kind of expected. The Supreme Court ruled that the First Amendment speech of users of the TikTok platform is not being infringed upon because there is this escape hatch that if TikTok were to sell to an American company, then of course our speech would be, sort of put back in place, I suppose. So certainly not the news that we had hoped for. We had hoped for a stay simply so that Congress and the Senate and the new incoming president would have time to more carefully review the situation we're in. But we now have to put our trust in President Trump to follow through on his promise to keep TikTok running.
Yep, and see if a deal can be reached. In the interim, what's your message to your followers, and what's your backup plan?
So the message to the followers is we found each other once. We will find each other again. The TikTok community we've built is robust and strong and resilient. Luckily, President Biden has said that he will not enforce this ban for 36 hours, so we will not wake up on Sunday to no TikTok at all. But certainly follow all your favorite creators on the Meta platforms and YouTube or Snapchat. Stay in touch. And, again, we have to hope that President Trump follows through on his promise to keep TikTok's lights on.
I know you're well versed in this and you understand the legal arguments, not only as a user, but just as somebody who's invested in the outcome. You talk about the escape hatch. Do you understand the national security concerns? And has it been something that has been forefront or that you've noticed as you've, cataloged your time on TikTok?
Oh, certainly, and I think it's an issue with all social media platforms. So something that AOC has been working on is a comprehensive data privacy protection act, and that's something that all TikTokers, I would say, greatly support. We, of course, want to feel safe on the internet, know that we're not being targeted by foreign adversaries, but I think we need something that applies to all social media, not something that narrowly targets a platform like TikTok, especially since they were not able to prove that any national security impropriety had happened, just that it could happen, and truly it could happen on any platform.
TikTok is more than silly faces and dance videos. How did you come across the platform and grow your following, and what has it meant to you?
Something that TikTok opened up for us is the idea of a two-way conversation when it comes to delivering the news. TikTok has been a powerful platform because of its Stitch and Duet feature, because of the comments. I mean, you come on and you get to deliver a news program, but you don't get to call up the folks who watched you and say, hey, what'd you think of that? Where can I improve? Where TikTok did allow us that opportunity to build a story and coalitions together on activism and news-related stories. But in addition, there were a lot of people who started churches on TikTok and who do live sessions to worship, and I'm concerned about their First Amendment rights, as now these religious leaders have said, it's kind of like burning my church down to shut down TikTok. I think when we went to the Supreme Court, we had two options. We could go with the First Amendment argument, or we could have gone and tried to prove that Congress passed this thing called Bill of Attainder, which means Congress passed a bill that punishes a company before they had a trial. We went with the First Amendment one. It didn't work out in our favor, but I don't think the fight is over.
What is it about TikTok that makes it different and more user-friendly than Instagram or Facebook or some of the other apps out there? And are you optimistic that they evolve and provide sort of the things that you love about TikTok?
Yes, and I think that they already have. Competition in this space makes everybody better, right? So when TikTok came out with really simple, easy-to-use editing tools that make it so any person can just use their phone and make a video and speak to the world, Instagram has sort of responded with creating better tools and Reels. YouTube responded by introducing YouTube Shorts, which was short-term vertical content. So I think we are going to see the other platforms try to pick up the TikTok refugees, if you will, but you won't be able to take away what we built and the historic archives of the last 5 years of information and storytelling on the TikTok platform.
In a perfect world, I know that TikTok stays around and offers all the things that it currently does, but have you thought about a U.S. buyer? And, in your message boards, is there sort of are people leaning one way or another for a potential next group in charge of the app?
I don't know that TikTokers are necessarily looking forward to who would be the ideal American buyer. Shou Chu, who's the current CEO of TikTok, has been also a great user of the platform, and he is very endeared to the community. And I think people really like the leadership decisions he's made as CEO, so they, maybe don't want to see him go away. He is married to an American, has American children, a home in Santa Monica, California. Maybe he would get to stay CEO of American TikTok. But I think more than anything, folks want to feel like they still have choice, like they're not going to have their platform just shut off in the middle of the night, and that whoever does own it won't infringe on antitrust issues or simply try to roll TikTok into one of the existing platforms.
Well, really interesting. Tell people about your platform and your following on TikTok. What is it that you use it for?
So I use it to communicate the day's events in a kind way from a safe space, and that's how we've set it up. It was meant to be a place for folks who the news maybe gives them anxiety or they didn't feel really invited to the conversation about government and civics, to just kind of come to this nice, safe space, feel accepted, ask questions, learn, and not always, have their emotions triggered by breaking news, breaking news. I just do the news just at 7 o'clock at night. We do long-form explainers on what's happening in U.S. politics, and we also do good news only on Thursdays because, of course, we want people to be hopeful when they tune into the news and feel like things aren't all going bad, but remember that there is so much good work and so many good people that we share community with.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, and as a journalist, we have to do our due diligence. How do you factor that into your responsibility as you get news out there?
So right now, just taking the TikTok ban as an issue, I feel like there's been a lot of gaps in the way that traditional media had covered the TikTok ban because they didn't really take a historic, archival approach to it. A lot of traditional media may find TikTok a little bit annoying to them, or some people think it's competition to them. I think we're best when we work together. And what I've done and have coming out this week is the history of TikTok and the TikTok ban, all the multiple attempts to ban it and the way that we failed at the Supreme Court today. And I think it'll just be interesting for folks to see how this all structured out, because one of the concerns that people have is if this can happen at TikTok and 170 million Americans, 7 million small businesses, puts $24 billion into the GDP, what else could the government point at and shut down?
I know you also, as you look at the history of TikTok, you have to take a critical look at where it lacks. Are there areas that you think that it could improve if it stays around?
Definitely the democratization of who goes viral on the platform. I think they do a pretty good job at that. I think we could do a better job at that. I think we could do a better job at communicating the data privacy safe spaces that have already been built into the platform, like the fact that all the American data is housed in Texas and Virginia under Oracle with American business entrepreneur Larry Ellison. We could have talked maybe more about the headquarters, more about the American employees, more about how the American employees own stock in the company. TikTok is 60% owned by global investors. I think one thing that we failed at because we were so focused on the platform and entertainment and sort of just being a creator and enjoying the space was not telling the truth about who are the owners, where is the data housed, and where are any of the soft spots that need to be shored up to ensure that American public has a good entertaining experience, but also a safe one.
Wow, I appreciate that. Talk about the emotional attachment to TikTok for so many.
We're trauma bonded here. A lot of TikTokers started at the same time back in the early pandemic age and is sort of getting through that experience together, getting through the rebuild post-pandemic together. We've seen our friends and neighbors' dreams come true. We've seen people make ends meet. Like some of the stories that I love are folks I've inspired to become a creator. Maybe they make $500 on the platform through the Creator Fund or $200, but that helped them put food on the table. That helped them pay for their kid to do an extra sport or activity in school. That helped them move to a better neighborhood. And I really do worry about the folks who are going to see that income disappear without a way to replace it.
A lot of people rely on it solely for their livelihood. Are you among them, and how do you replace that income?
Certainly I am among them. I've been lucky enough to be able to diversify my platforms, and as the millennial that I am, I've always kind of kept a full-time in real life job because, I'm older. I have a whole family to take care of. My dreams are limited. I always treated my TikTok money like extra in some ways, but it will certainly have a major impact on my family, on the ways we can fund independent journalism, on the ways that we can support activism and up-and-coming journalists. I've spent a lot of the money I've made on TikTok investing in trying to democratize who gets a voice when it comes to journalism, telling the news, or leading, action against the government in ways that we don't want. I've donated a ton to trying to get the Equal Rights Amendment passed, which also today it was quite the roller coaster. We hear the SCOTUS opinion at the exact same time President Biden affirms that he believes the ERA is the law of the land. So we'll be covering that for as long as TikTok is on, and hoping that things get better. But I do worry for people about, a lot of people are going to feel like they got fired, or they lost a job today, or they got a pay cut today, and that's a despair and a difficulty that I don't think we could handle right now.
I really appreciate how much thought you've given to all of this and how much research you've done. It's very thorough, and it's helping me even understand just better where we're at this point and the impact that it's having on so many across this platform. How do you think that we responsibly navigate the waters of social media moving forward? It happened so fast. I think there's a bit of whiplash for people. And how much responsibility do you put on these big tech companies to get it right?
I think right now what Americans can do if they feel scared or they're unsure is recognize that this was rushed legislation. It was never debated on the floor of the Senate. It was couched in a humanitarian aid package that had to pass. And what I think the American people demand is that our lawmakers take a more critical look at this. Again, name me another time where an industry that puts $24 billion into our economy just gets lights out on them. I think we need to call our congresspeople and our senators, of course, petition to future President Trump that this is more than just a social media platform. This is an economic powerhouse. It is an opportunity creator. And all we're asking for is more time. Have the debates. Have the experts actually look at this and say, hey, is there something we could do to better protect people that doesn't involve annihilation, that doesn't involve a complete blackout? And I think you will see that TikTokers and the American public have a lot of great ideas for how to do that without causing an economic apocalypse.
Are you surprised that the TikTok model hasn't been better and more quickly replicated so that it is more transparent and I guess considered safe by some in the U.S.?
No, I'm not surprised because, like everything, the new technology is always the least understood. Like the newspapers hated the radio hated the TV. There's always been, like, whatever is new is seen as dangerous or somehow untested, and social media is no different. Also, I've had conversations with people in Congress, and they're like, well, why can't you just move to Instagram Reels? And it's because each one of these social media platforms, much like each one of our news networks, has a different culture. We prioritize different stories. The editing tools are different. The talent behind how things are produced is different. You can't just burn down my house and tell me to move in with my neighbor. My neighbor already lives there. It's a saturated environment on YouTube or Instagram. So I think losing a whole platform certainly is going to reduce opportunity for people. And that's what I hope Congress and the Senate are looking at is how are we, for President Trump, who's coming in, making America great by limiting opportunity and removing $24 billion from the GDP.
Wow. Well, this is a really important decision and issue, and there's a lot of nuance to it. V. Spear, thank you for your perspective as a creator and also someone who's followed this closely and knows the ins and outs. I greatly appreciate your time, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, Marnie. I appreciate your curiosity and always, having me on to tell the truth to the people. I appreciate you. Thank you.
That's right. All right. Likewise.